Welcome to the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast with Lisa Bolton and Melissa Hartfield. We are two women who are artists and entrepreneurs, and yes, those two things can go together. This podcast is for the artists, the creators, and the makers who want to find a way to make a living creating what they love.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the And She Looked Up Creative Hour podcast. I'm here virtually with my co-host, Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about managing distractions when you work from home. And first, before we dive into that, I just wanted to mention that Melissa did a beautiful job on getting our Squarespace website up and running. You can pop over to andshelookedup.com and you're going to find a little bit more about what Melissa and I are doing, a little bit more about us, but also all the episode recaps you might like, the show notes. If you're unable to get through an entire episode, there's a great summary of all the things we talked about, any links, books, just all the resources are all captured there. So andshelookedup.com is up and running, and we'd love for you to check it out. And this month, May 2020, we're actually talking all about what it's like to be a creative working from home. So whether you're full-time at home, whether you're side hustling from home, or really anything in between, we wanted to dedicate a series of episodes that really get into setting yourself up for being inspired, for being focused and organized, all from a home-based environment. A home which is like mine, often buzzing with obstacles and distractions. And if you're just kind of dipping your toe into the water of creating from home, if you pop back and listen to last week's episode, episode 10, that episode was really focused on getting started. So really setting up and creating a work from home space that's dedicated to your work. And it's a really good one, full of tips on sort of just if you're getting set up from the beginning. But today we're going to talk about, now that you've set up your space, how do you manage all the distractions? So whether it's people like roommates or partners or kids or parents or dogs, or it's technology distractions, things like social media or emails, or just the demands of home like chores or errands and catching up with friends. There's really no shortage of distractions when you set up to work from home. As I'm recording this podcast right now, I'm crossing my fingers that the Amazon guy doesn't ding the doorbell, or that the 18 things I've given my 9-year-old to do are going to be enough, and you're not going to be interrupted by a bit of a knock on the door with a mom, kind of followed by a series of questions as to what he needs to do next. So we really wanted to tackle some of those things and just share how Melissa and I have set up systems to help manage those distractions at home, and also still manage some semblance of balance between the work and the play.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was making a list of the things that distract me. And oddly enough, my top 3 distractions, I realized after I had written them out that they have nothing to do with working from home. So I had to rejig a little bit and try and think of like what specifically distracts me when I am working at home. I also had to kind of go back in my head because I think after 10 years of working from home, I'm fairly good at managing distractions. And a lot of the things that used to distract me when I first started out don't really bother me anymore. That's some good news for all of you out there who are just starting. As you do this longer, it does get better. Of course, there are things that you cannot control, like dogs and small children and things like that. But what are some of your biggest distractions when you're working from home?
Oh, yeah, I think, well, you nailed it. There's definitely, children, like a dog or a small child. I think they can be both equally distracting. I found, and I think because my experience of having a home office has been also since I had an infant, it's really evolved because at the beginning I had a newborn, and throughout toddler years and, now having a 9.5-year-old, the ability to be able to have some quiet time or distraction-free time has evolved significantly. And so now I really feel like in the last year or so, there's a lot more of a groove. I think a lot of parents will find if you're a work from home parent, once your child starts full-time school, that is both a blessing and a curse. But I think I suddenly felt like I'd have this huge block of time. And then you find out that, wow, 9 to 2 goes by really fast when you're trying to get anything done, and you have to adjust for that. I would say, yeah, just managing, having a child at home. And then I find the chores at home, like the errands, like I'll just pop a load of laundry in, or I'll clean up those dishes. I just kind of those little things that when you work an office job are not part of your day and they're not even in your mind. Separating those pieces are a big for me. I have less of a hard time, I think, with some of the technology piece. It's more for me the actual physical things of people, chores and errands. A big one for me is also the social aspect. I have a community of friends that also have flexible work environments. Saying no to a text conversation, a coffee, a lunch, because I'm working, I sometimes struggle with being able to say that when I work from home and when I do a lot of freelance stuff. I found that was a tough thing to put boundaries on, to really own the fact that this isn't a good time. So I kind of created a list of things that, as we work through this discussion, I can pop into how I've sort of managed those. How about for yourself?
Yeah, my biggest distraction specific to working from home is my dad. And we've talked a bit about him in other episodes, but he suffered a brain injury 10 years ago. So in some ways it is very much like a child. He has a tendency to ask 1,000 questions a day and to ask the same questions over and over again. And he also has a tendency to interrupt where he wouldn't have before, like just less awareness of what other people are doing. We've been dealing with that for years, and it's just second nature now. I don't really think about it too much unless it's a really awkward time.
Mm-hmm. I think the parallels between that and it's the unpredictability sometimes. So you've got this plan, and as long as everything works, sometimes having a dependent of some sort in your life or in your space at home, it's the unpredictability I find a little bit challenging.
Yeah, he also, he's 80, so he doesn't have the best hearing. So he tends to have the television on most of the day, extremely loud. Some days it doesn't bother me at all. Other days it just makes my skin crawl. And that's a big one for me too, is noises, loud noises that are unexpected. I live in a neighborhood where there's a tremendous amount of construction going on. So there's always banging, large equipment, engine noises, and a lot of work that makes my house shake. That has been one of the nice things during this self-isolation mode that we're in, is that a lot of the construction has stopped or slowed down considerably. It's been very quiet. Those kind of noises are a big one for me. And clutter and mess. I can't work in clutter and mess. Like, I record this in the basement, and when I came into the family room set up this morning, there was dog hair everywhere. I had to vacuum. Before I could start, and I know it's clean. And that's one of the benefits of having an office with a door. If I don't see the mess, I'm fine. But if the mess is immediately around me, it drives me to distraction. Those are probably my big ones specific to working from home. I have bigger ones, but they're more on me.
Just being self-employed.
Yes, or just being employed. Like, honestly, some of them are things that even if I had a job in an office would still distract me. More related to my personality than anything else. So
Sure. I found for me the biggest thing for dealing with the distractions of sort of the house stuff is really setting those boundaries with office hours, like an intentional time with, I know that I will be in my office at 9:00 because I know that's normally, I'm normally back from school drop off by around 8:35 or so. And so that gives me 25 minutes to make a coffee, maybe put some breakfast dishes away or whatnot. But whatever happens, I have to be, in my office by 9:00, and respecting that as sort of the start time. And then throughout the day, I've got some different methods for keeping on task, but I won't allow myself to sort of get pulled into a home project, or if there are some dishes that don't get done, they're just going to have to stay, but I'm allowed to do them at lunchtime, and I'm allowed to do them, after pickup in my situation. But I find that setting those office hours is really important to kind of respect your time and allows you to sort of break free from some of those distractions.
Yeah, when you were talking about, having friends who call and want to go for coffee and things like that, when I was thinking back to when I first started out and the things that really threw me off track, that was the biggest one. And I think when you quit your job, you have this idealized vision of what it's going to be like. It's like, oh, I can set my own hours. I can work whenever I want. I can, my time is my own. Nobody gets to tell me what to do and when to do it. But you realize very, very quickly that you really do need some kind of structure and routine to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the same. I am in my office by 9 o'clock. I am not a morning person, and that was one of the things I really struggled with working in an office, was getting up on time and getting to work on time. And we started at 8:30, so and I had a 45-minute commute. So, I basically had things timed down to the minute of when I absolutely had to get out of bed. One of the beauties of getting to work from home and work for myself is like I can roll out of bed at 8:30 and still be showered, dressed, fed, and in my office by 9 o'clock and ready to go. I have structure, but the structure is on my terms. It's just, it is structure. And I think that's really important, is to make sure that you have some kind of structure. And if if the best time for you to be at work is from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., that's fine. Like, you don't have to be in your office at 9. You just have to have like some predictability, a certain amount of predictability to your day.
Yeah, it makes shutting down in the afternoon, for me, keeping morning hours a lot easier, because I've already done the work and I don't feel like I have to keep checking back in all the time and maybe being as responsive in the evening. It's the days that I don't keep that structure that then I find it creeps into the dinner hour and the evening hour, and then I feel like I haven't even had a break from it. If I know that the reward is there, if I set those office hours and respect those for me on the front half of the day, I don't feel so bad shutting that off and walking away from it in the latter part.
Not every day has to look the same. Like my days of the week look very different from each other, but they're the same. Like my Mondays are consistently the same. My Tuesdays are consistently the same, even though Monday and Tuesday look very different from each other. So that's another way you can kind of manage that. But let's talk a little bit more about the whole managing other people's demands on your, because this is a hard one when you start out, especially if you have other friends who are in the early stages of working from home and having flexible hours, or if you have female friends who are moms that stay home and don't necessarily work from home, but they're at home, or just friends who are on time off from work and think because you work from home, oh, you must be free to go for a coffee, and like you said, it can be very hard to say no to those things.
I found that a very tough adjustment, and I still find it tough to say no to people when they want to chat or get together, go for a coffee, because it actually does bring me joy and it is something I want to do. So it's not a matter of choosing between two undesirable things, or one is something I'm trying to avoid something. I want to do the work I'm doing, and I also want to spend time with my friend. So that makes it a tough choice sometimes. And then the knowledge of, well, I'm my own boss. So I think I put out there that, well, they must think, well, you work for yourself, so you have all this flexibility. That reality is I'm trying to cram as much as I can into the window that I've already designated for work, that it becomes a tricky balance.
Absolutely. I think too, when your friends and things, ask you to go for coffee, I mean, yeah, absolutely you want to, because working from home is, you're all by yourself. You are very isolated in a way. You don't have the same opportunity to chit chat with coworkers and things like that. So it's very tempting to go out and have a coffee just because it's nice to talk to somebody. I noticed this when I first started out. I had another friend who was fairly early on in his journey working from home as well. And we used to chat quite regularly on WhatsApp or via text message or whatever, Skype and that kind of thing. And as we've sort of moved along on our path, that relationship has changed dramatically. We're still good friends, but we don't chat every day. Like it's much more, we'll meet for lunch a few times because we've just realized it's not productive to do what we were doing as much as it was enjoyable. And it was nice to have a friend who was figuring this all out same time, but was a step or two ahead of me. So you have to learn how to say no. So learning how to say no probably took me the first 5 years, but now I'm a whiz at it.
I think that's so true, because I really realized that this is all me. This is nothing to do with them. I'm the one projecting that, oh, if I say no, they're going to have a judgment. The reality is that 99% of the time they're going to be like, okay, no problem. I'll catch you the next time or whatnot. So I think a lot of it was me shifting from saying yes, even though I had work to do, so I'd pay for it later. And then I would actually do something very similar often too, was to blame it on a client. So I would say, well, I've got a deadline, or I have a client, or I'm working on this project, when all I really needed to say is I'm working today. My day is full today. It would be no different than when I worked in an office and a colleague, girlfriend would come up from another floor and say, oh, do you have time to go for a coffee? And I could look at her straight and say, I don't, I'm swamped. I'll catch you tomorrow or later or whatnot, it was never a big deal. And so I just really shifted my own mindset to saying, it's no different. I'm busy today. It doesn't work for me today. I'm working hard today. I've got a lot to do today. It doesn't have to be that I'm meeting anybody else's deadline. It can be my own objectives and deadlines. That can be that, and that can be reason enough to put that up. And friends that are friends are completely supportive of that and excited for you and happy for you. I think that it is a very rare situation where anybody actually feels a bit put out by that. So that's what I've become. I think that comes with age and experience, but that's where I've become a lot more comfortable in my own skin, saying no when it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Another big one that was really distracting in the first few years was traveling to meet clients. I had a very service-based business at the time, and a lot of clients wanted to meet face to face, which is fine. And I still do that when necessary. But I live in the suburbs, and a lot of them would live in the city, and commuting in and out of the suburbs during the workday takes up a tremendous amount of time. It's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of realized like I'm spending like an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes, depending whether I drive or whether I take transit, to get into the city for a 30-minute coffee meeting. Mm-hmm. Like that doesn't make sense unless I'm going down there for multiple meetings and I'm, going to be there for a day or I have other errands. And so I started to get very firm about that. We also, with FBC, we would get invited to a lot of lunchtime PR type events.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early days, we would go because it was a good chance to network with potential clients and things like that. But after a while, it was just like, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm in Delta, you're in Vancouver, and I just can't come out there for a fancy lunch kind of thing.
Yeah, you just have to be more selective with your time when you're the one in charge of it and there's such a limited resource.
Yeah, and when you work for yourself, your time really is your money.
Mm-hmm.
That hour and a half that I am spending, if I'm driving, I'm not doing anything else while I'm not somebody who can drive and talk on the phone at the same time. That's just not a good idea for me. So that's one of the reasons why I take transit quite often, is because even though it takes me a little bit longer, at least I can do something productive while I'm on transit.
Mm-hmm.
So just things like that, just learning to say no. I got right down to the point where now I only do phone calls on certain days of the week, because phone calls for me, they're usually bigger, like conference call type things that can go on for a considerable amount of time, and they exhaust me. I'm an introvert. Doing an hour and a half phone call is draining for me.
Yeah.
And it usually throws me off for the rest of the day. So I just decided one day that, you know what, it is better to book all my phone calls on one day and have that one day be the day that I'm exhausted. And then the rest of the week, I can dive into what I need to get done and do it. But and I'm a people pleaser. So saying no is hard for me. I hate to say no. I hate doing it. It always makes me feel like crap. But I'm also kind of at this point in my life where, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say it that way. I do care. But, I've just kind of learned that for me to be the most productive and to help the most people, I need to be able to concentrate and do my work and really dig into what needs to get done. That may mean that I don't do conference calls on 3 days of the week.
I think that you absolutely do care, and you care enough about yourself to take care of yourself first, which is important when you're an entrepreneur. It's the oxygen mask on you before you put it on your seatmate. As you get older, I do think that you're right. It's not that I don't care. It's that I just care enough about, I have to take care of myself first. That makes me a better friend, a better colleague, a better mom, all of those things if I'm doing that first. And I do think a lot of that comes with age.
But in terms of saying no to things and feeling bad about it, one of the things I kind of dawned on me one day, and I don't remember what triggered this, but like you said, I don't need to tell them that I only do conference calls on these days or whatever. Like, all it is when somebody says to you, are you available for a call at this time, or for whatever, for a coffee, for a meeting, to get me this piece of paper that I need, mm-hmm. all the things that people are asking, I don't need to explain to them. All I need to say is that I have free space on Tuesday at 2:00. Does that work for you?
Exactly.
And if somebody comes back and says, well, actually, no, how about Wednesday? I just say, you know what? I'm really sorry. I'm booked up on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's none of their business what I'm booked up doing.
Well, I think that's really one of the biggest things for managing distractions at home is that setting a schedule for yourself. Like, I love what you said about how you have certain themes for certain days of the week, that you do certain things, are kind of dedicated that way. I think when you actually block in the work that you have to do into your calendar, it's a lot easier to look at a full calendar that's got appointments in it, even if those are appointments with yourself, than it is to stare at a week that maybe you only have 1 or 2 meetings with external people, and it can make it look like you've got all this free time. But in fact, you could fill that very easily by actually putting that into your planner or into your calendar so that you can say, no, that is spot that is reserved for someone else. That's really going to help manage some of those distractions that you don't have control over.
Yeah. And just realizing that you don't have to explain your no's to people. That was a really hard one for me to get over. But if somebody asks if I am free on a certain day and it's not my day to do calls, I just say, no, I'm booked up.
They don't need to know more than that.
Nobody's business what I'm doing. So just don't worry about it. And once I really came to terms with that and understood that, it was like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. And I am much more productive as a result. Which ultimately is better for everyone. It's better for my clients. It's better for my businesses. And don't be afraid to prioritize your time for you, what works best for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the ways that you can approach that too at home, especially for moms that have kids at home, and at this time, again, still recording during the pandemic, all the kids are home. Know of a family who have 2 working parents. They were self-employed prior to everything, but now the kids are home, and they've implemented a stoplight system. So the parents have like red, yellow, and green. Red on the door means do not disturb right now. You're going to have to problem solve on your own or figure it out unless you're bleeding. Now is not the time to come in. And yellow is, I'm doing something that if you really need to come in, you can, but I'm still working. And then green is like, yeah, whatever I'm doing, completely feel free to interrupt me, or maybe office hours are done for the day. But they set up sort of a stoplight system, which I really liked, because as much as you can have external distractions when you're working from home, sometimes the people living in your house can be, and there can be really cute ways to set those boundaries as well. And I don't think it's ever really too early to start that, especially for school-age kids.
Yeah, I have a friend whose son, I think, is 6, and her husband both work from home. They have worked from home for a long time. And of course, he's at home with them right now. And so what they've done is they have set up different alarms on his iPad. So the different alarms, because he's not very good at telling time yet, the different alarms, like they have different sounds. And so one sound will mean it's time for us all to go for a walk together. And another sound means it's time to eat. And another sound means this. So he sort of kind of keeps himself entertained in between sounds. And he knows when it's a sound that his parents are going to be his parents are going to come out and interact with him. And he knows when he needs to be quiet. And it's all based on sounds. So I think those are some really creative ways to kind of manage your kids when they're at home with you, because something visual or something audible, I think that has more of an impression on them when they're very small.
And anytime you can break something into chunks for little ones, it's really helpful. Even for while recording this podcast today, I have set up my son with both time-based things and choice-based things. So he's got a list of things that he has to do. I've got things sort of in the A bucket, which is things he doesn't love to do, and in the B bucket. And I've just set him up with, you get to alternate from A to B while mom's working. And, you can spend a maximum 15 minutes on each of these things. And I think giving them that autonomy and that choice, all within a sandbox that has well-defined boundaries, works well for a lot of kids. And amazing how time can actually pass really quick for them. An hour can go by very fast if they have well-structured and activities that they like, and knowing that they're kind of a reward after doing some of the things that maybe are less favorable.
Yeah, I love that idea, actually, because I think that we are setting up a whole new generation of little entrepreneurs by giving them all these choices and ability to structure their time. It just makes them think that I can make choices without somebody else necessarily making them for me, even though you are kind of making them for them.
Kind of guiding them. I feel it's a little bit not unlike how I would structure my day. Like, I've got things that I don't like doing, and there's tasks within my day I do like doing. And so, adults are the same. We flip and flop between the stuff we like to do and don't like to do. And I think if you can show the kids the respect, provided they follow the rules, the more choice you can give them to plan out their day, I think the better. And I'm learning that is advantageous for not only him, but for me as well to get things done.
And what you said about we all have to do things that we don't like to do. One of my absolute least favorite chores ever of running a business is doing bookkeeping. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And so bookkeeping and admin stuff is what I do on Monday mornings. Mm-hmm. Like it's the first thing I do in the week because then it's done. I feel tremendously accomplished after I do it. And I sort of feel like if I get nothing else this week done, at least I got the thing that I hate doing the most out of the way. So that's another one of my sort of big distractions as just a person working, not so much to do from home, is procrastinating the things I don't like to do. So that's one way that I sort of manage that one particular thing, which honestly, if I did not do it every Monday morning, would get done maybe once every 3 months, which is not a good situation.
I think that speaks to having a really good planning system at home as well. Maybe one that is designated for home stuff and one that's designated for work stuff. I know from my experience, I really like Michael Hyatt's planner. Maybe I don't use it as often as I should, but when I do get using it, it's been one that works really well for me. But the concept that I like about it is he kind of has, when you think about your week, he has your, sort of the big 3 things that you want to get accomplished during the week. But then every day there's also broken down into 3 things, but it keeps it very tight and manageable. And if I know that they're written down and they're done, that's part of keeps me structured in my day. If I'm working during the day, quite often it'll pop into my head that I have to make an appointment for the truck, or I have to remember to call this landscaper back. And those things I can find distracting. And if I have a good planning system where I have a separate planner that's just for home things, if I can quickly jot that down, then that really helps me get quickly back on task, as opposed to going, maybe I should call them right now so I don't forget. And then that kind of leads me down a bit of a rabbit hole. So for me, having a planner at home that's very much dedicated to just my work, and a family planner or sort of a household planner is a really good way to keep those distractions at bay. And I know that there's some really good apps. I know there's one called Remembering the Milk. There's another one called To Do, like TEUX, To Do. Those are a couple, and there's so many. You could literally just have a notes file if you prefer to keep it electronic. But that I find really helps me manage those other things that don't have anything to do with my day, but inevitably it just pops up that I have to remember to buy milk. That will send me off on a different path.
Yeah, that's a big one for me, especially as I get older. And I think our next episode that we're recording is on time blocking and batching.
We do have one of those coming up. Yeah, we do. Yeah. Productivity, batching.
We'll talk a little bit more in depth about some of this then. But for me, one of my biggest distractions is, like you just mentioned, all the stuff swirling in my head. It's amazing how much all those little things, like I have to get milk, or I have to make a doctor's appointment, or I got to call this person, or whatever, how much space that takes up and energy that takes up in your brain, because you don't want to forget it. Yeah. But at the same time, it's not, it's useful information, but it's not useful information. It's just causing clutter in your head. And so I have a planner as well. It's one that I actually, it's a take on bullet journal. So it's designed very much for how my brain thinks. And one of the things I do is at the start of every week, I have a list, I have a task list page. It's just where I dump all those things. Like as soon as it comes into my head that I need to make an appointment, or I need to go pick up the dog's food from the vet, or whatever, like all that stuff, I just dump it into the to-do list at the beginning of the week. So it's written down, like it's out of my head. Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry anymore. I'm not going to forget it because I wrote it down. It's on a list. And then as I'm plotting out my week, I use one planner for everything, but each day has like a life stuff box.
Yeah.
And so what I'll do is at the beginning of the week is I'll just start plotting those things in to make some sense. And working from, one of the things I do love about working from home is that you can do a lot of these errands during the week when it's not busy. So I don't have kids, so it's a little different for me, but I will often take a morning during the week where I will go out and I'll do all that crap that if I did it on the weekend would take me twice as long, because there'd be 10 times as many people doing all that stuff. And then I'll work for half a day on the weekend to kind of make up for it. And not everybody has that flexibility, but that's one way that I am much more productive with my time. And I can manage those distractions a little bit better. Like, and that day will change every week, but it might be Tuesday morning is the morning where I'm going to go do grocery shopping. I'm going to go take the dog my dog gets regular injections at the vet. So that's a regular trip. I'm going to go to the post office and mail my Etsy orders. I'm going to do like all those things kind of get bundled into one morning. I like to be very efficient when I have to leave the house.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who likes to leave the house every day to do an errand. Like I want to do them all in one day. So yeah. And what's funny is right now there is a Loomis delivery truck outside my house, which is delivering the dog's food because his vet went to a home delivery service during this pandemic. I don't know if you're going to keep this in, but the funny thing is I asked Lisa if we could record in the morning because that's the time when I have the least amount of distractions. And today, every single thing that could happen has happened. She's going to have fun editing this.
Well, at least I think you'll have a nice quiet afternoon because all your distractions will have been out of the way.
One would hope, right?
But it's real life. And I think it's real life for a lot of people that are living the work from home dream. And yeah, the kind of things that come along with that.
All right. Well, dog food delivered. That's one errand I don't have to go.
It's off your list. I think it's smart though to separate off if you can batch together a bunch of personal errands when you're someone who does work from home, and you're right, take advantage of the quieter times to go out and get that stuff done. That can make a huge, I just can't believe how much sometimes errands can be a time sucker when you've got that just limited time. Like I feel with a child in grade school, and having that 9 to 2 window is so tight. And when things don't go according to plan, when you're on a designated errand run and it just eats into your time, that is just precious. It's precious for everyone. But when you've just kind of got that schedule of when you're by yourself, I like to try to get that stuff done. And yeah, it can be very frustrating. So batching that stuff together and you're not in and out is a real time saver for sure.
Yeah, I was even very protective of that when I worked in an office. I would often go out and do all the errands on my lunch hour, so I wouldn't have to do them on the weekend. So anyway, yeah, I just like to get everything done sort of in one fell swoop, and then just takes up less mental energy for me. And it's one of the nice things about this pandemic is just really reevaluating, like, what do I actually need to leave the house to do? And to be clear, like, I am an introvert, so I really do like having quiet time and not having to go out. But at the same time, I do like to go out and be with the people. But now I'm just, you're very much more selective about when you choose to go out for health reasons. And it's really made me sort of rethink, like, all the things. Like, it's brilliant that my dog's vet has put in an online shopping portal that will stay after this all ends. And now I can get his food delivered once a month. And they have like a recurring delivery like Amazon does. So yeah, just like little things like that. I've really been rethinking, like, do I need to go out and do all these things that are really just distractions at the end of the day?
I agree with you. I think it's really let people see how little they have to go out to the store and how much time they gain back. I also noticed that my community has really been great at stepping up. So literally during this podcast this morning, a girlfriend texts me and says, "Hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you need anything?" I am an able-bodied, healthy person that could go out and get it. But yeah, pre-pandemic, I would have gone out by myself, maybe to get avocados if I wanted those for something for dinner. Nowadays, I would just do without. But it's nice to have a friend who you could say, "Oh yeah, you know what? If you can grab me 2 avocados, that'd be wonderful." And I would do the same for her. And I think that's something that's coming out if you can, take care of each other and help out someone else who is self-employed or working from home and trying to balance everything, that it pays back in spades and is, there's so many benefits. There's environmental benefits, there's time benefits, there's a sense of community and helping each other out. So yeah, at least I think there's some positives coming out of this.
I am way more thrilled than I should be over getting dog food delivered, but
Hey, but it saves you. If you think about that, I mean, that's where a lot of the online grocery, pre-pandemic, online grocery was a huge lifesaver to people with small children, because I talked to so many moms that said just the effort of packing up a couple kids, that especially when they're little, and all of the things. Yes. And, all the what we talked about even at the beginning, the unpredictability of little ones and what can happen. And that grocery store venture can be hours. And when you can sit at home and click and reorder the same things, and you might give up a little bit of choice, and you might have to be a little bit flexible with some substitutions, or you might not always get what you want, but that gift of the hours of just having to pull into a parking stall and lift your trunk and someone puts it in, to people that are, self-employed or not, anyone. I've used it several times. It's fantastic. And it's things that you really realize you don't need to be spending time on.
Yeah. Another friend who's a recipe developer, she was worried. This is pre-pandemic. She was away on vacation and she had to dive right into recipe creation and testing the minute she got back in order to hit some photography deadlines that had to happen for a cookbook that was being produced. And she was kind of like, I don't want to have food in the house before we go away because it's not going to be in good shape by the time we get back. And I just said, why don't you place an order online and have it delivered the day you get home? She had always kind of pushed back from doing that because most of what she does focuses on is the food styling like you do. But she's like, you know what? For food styling, she wants to be the one to pick things out.
Sure.
That's a different process, right? But she's like, you know what? This is just for recipe testing. It doesn't matter what the food looks like. Like, yeah, why am I not doing this?
No, it's so true. It's such a thing. Yeah.
She comes back an hour after she gets home. They've got a delivery of groceries. She puts it away and she's ready to go. So all those little time-saving things that you can do, sometimes they happily impact your business and sometimes they just happily impact your personal life.
It's really taking advantage of technology and the way that people are starting to think, businesses are starting to think about getting their goods to people.
Yeah. What next?
Well, I had one of the things that I found works for me, and they kind of tie together, but definitely, first of all, starting with a sense of routine. And I think we touched on it a little bit, but I started employing, when I was writing my cookbook, I started employing the Pomodoro Technique, which is very famous, popular, and for those who don't know or haven't heard about it, but the concept is really that you set a timer, focus on a task for 25 minutes. When the timer goes off, you take a 5-minute break, and you do this for a cycle. So the original protocol was to do 4 cycles of that. I often don't get to 4 cycles before I'm taking a longer break, but the original protocol I think is 4 cycles, and then you take a 15 to 30-minute break. But that really worked well for me. So envisioning going into my office, putting the red stoplight on, shutting the door, setting my timer for 25 minutes, and just going full on, which means, other browsers are closed, emails off, and I'm just really focused. Then when the timer goes off, even if you're in the flow of it, really being able to step away. I even found that sometimes difficult when the timer went off to actually step away, even if I was feeling it. But those 5-minute breaks, turning away from whatever I was concentrating on and then coming back. After doing that for a couple weeks, I definitely noticed an increase in my productivity, and the amount and quality of the work I was getting done in those 25-minute blocks was far greater than in the past when even I was just trying to kind of go into my office for the next couple hours to write. I found chunking that really made a huge difference, and you don't need anything other than a timer to do that kind of program, and you can set for as long as works for you. But 25 minutes is a nice chunk of time if you're working on something really specific.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk a little bit about planned distractions because there is a place and time for stopping work throughout the day. Like, it is important to get up, to move around, particularly to move around, like get some blood flowing in your body. And I do something very similar. I wear a Fitbit and I have the little piece turned on where it buzzes you at 10 to the hour if you haven't gotten up and had 250 steps
an
hour.
Time to stand.
It's time to stand. And it's not so much that I'm like worried about getting my steps because I don't usually have an issue getting 10,000 steps in a day. But I just like the fact that it just reminds me, hey, it's time to get up. It's time to move around. It's time to go make a cup of tea, or it's, just something like do 50 jumping jacks, or I'm doing this really awesome 30 days to the splits challenge.
Oh, that's fantastic.
A friend of mine recommended it. It's not really about doing the splits. It's really just about increasing your flexibility. And it's really great if you spend a lot of the day seated.
Oh, what a cool challenge to have.
It is. And it's easy. Like, it's an easy challenge. It's not one of these ones where you do it for 10 or 15 minutes and you're sweating like crazy and you're exhausted or whatever. Because it's mostly stretching. And you see results within 2 or 3 days. Like,
you have to post that or send it to me. I think that's a fun one.
I think my entire mastermind group is one of the girls in my mastermind group who was doing it. And I think all of us are doing it now. And it's like, and you feel the difference in your back and your hips, like the first day. It's just like, oh.
That's an intentional break.
That's an intentional break. And I have a reminder on my phone that goes off when it's time for me to do that. Another one that I have is a really good friend of mine works very close to where I live. And so we usually go for lunch once or twice a week. The day varies from week to week, but that's like a planned distraction. Yes, I do go out for lunch, but I have to eat lunch anyway. And we go to a handful of restaurants that are a 5-minute walk from my house. So it gets me up, it gets me out the door, it gets me moving. Then I sit down, I get to have something good for lunch. I have a nice break, like a timed break. He has to be back at his office within an hour. So it's not like one of these leisurely lunches that drags on. I walk home and I've had like this nice break in my day where I would have had lunch anyway. And I've got to talk to another person and interact with some people. We haven't been doing this for the last 2 months and I really miss it.
Yeah.
So I'll be really happy when we can go for lunch again. He's still working, so he's still out this way, but we can't go for lunch. So yeah, so things like that. I also have a planned distraction for walking my dog. That's a really great one. Even though sometimes I'm in the middle of something and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to walk the dog right now. I have to walk the dog. He has to go for a walk. So you know, that gets us out and moving. And I never, ever regret walking the dog. I come home and my head is cleared. I like to walk him around lunch hour because I do my best work in the afternoon. So I come home, he's walked, he's tired, he goes to bed. I'm refreshed and energized and I just dive into my work and pretty much work distraction free from 2 till 5:30.
I'm so the opposite. That is my absolute worst time to work.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not a morning person. Like I just don't function in the morning. That's why I tend to do things that's when I do social media. It's when I do email. It's when I do like all those tasks. I also use a timer system. One of my biggest distractions is social media, particularly Facebook groups. My mastermind group, we have a Facebook group. I run a very active Facebook group for my business and I can get sucked into those for hours if I'm not careful. And so I like to do those in the morning, but I also have like on Mondays, which is my admin day in the afternoon, I do things like schedule all our social media for the week, create Pinterest pins, all those things. They're tasks that don't really move the business forward. They don't really earn income, but I call them busy work tasks. I need to get done, but they're not necessarily the best use of my time. And so I set a timer for 30 minutes to make new pins, 30 minutes to update social media posts or whatever that needs to go out. And there's usually a third one. I usually have 3 things that I can't remember what the third one is right now. But anyway, I set a 30-minute timer on my phone. And when it goes off, it doesn't matter if I am really in the groove with it. It's like, no, you need to stop. You don't need to spend more than 30 minutes a week making new Pinterest pins. Even though I love doing that. I could make pins all day and I do that for clients. That's one of my freelance services. But it's if I'm not making them for clients, it's not making me money. So I have to be really careful about how much time I spend on that for myself.
I found that too with responding to messages or being engaged and getting into some of the social media stuff that I do. I agree with you. I have to set limits for myself. And for me, it's more like time of day. Like I'll, check it in the morning, check it at lunch and check it maybe before I go to bed, but trying not to popping in and out of it all day. And your phone, it's some really good feedback is to go into your screen time for your phone. If you use an iPhone, I'm not sure about on the other phones, but I know it was very eye-opening to me when it's amazing, like how many pickups you have, how much time you're spending on certain apps, and good or bad, it's just feedback. And, you can't really argue with the statistics that come out of it.
It's so shocking,
isn't it?
When you first start doing it, it's shocking. Mine is up really high right now because I'm playing a game on my iPhone in my spare time. I'm busy merging dragons. But no, it is really shocking because it does segment it out. Like it tells me how much of the time I've spent playing this game and how much of it I've spent on social media. And that sort of brings up another big point. I have virtually the only notifications I get on my phone are text messages, phone calls, and my splits, my 30-day stretching notifications. That's it. I have everything else turned off. I have Facebook Messenger. I don't even have that on my phone. When I first did it, it like gave me the shakes. But honestly, after 3 or 4 days, you don't even notice it. Yeah, I don't even notice that I don't get them. And I've had those notifications off for over a year, and it just makes a huge difference because we are just so programmed to look at our phone when that screen lights up. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're just like, zip.
Yeah.
And that is a huge distraction. And that's not necessarily related to working from home, but it is a massive distraction for a lot of people. And so I just have it shut off. And if I don't see it, I don't know about it. And then I go, and I do the same with email. I don't get email notifications on my phone. And I am very strict about email. I check my email in the morning. I check it again before I wrap up for the day. And sometimes I will check it in the middle of the day. And if you get a response from me in the middle of the day, it is purely luck that you just sort of managed to email me right around the time where I'm checking my email. Nobody emails you to do something for you. Everybody emails you to ask you to do something for them. And, I am not at the beck and call of anyone but my clients. And even then, I don't necessarily feel that I need to be available to them 24/7. Nobody should be available to their clients 24/7. And my clients are amazing, and none of them really expect that kind of treatment. But yeah, like really think about how you're spending your time in email, because email can suck the life out of you. Like, you can easily spend your entire day in your email.
You absolutely can. I did in January a major unsubscribe to so many different things. And I think you employ this technique as well, but created a new email that I use for promotions and shopping and all the fun things in life and subscriptions and things like that. And I unsubscribed to so many things that it was a little bit, once you unsubscribe to a lot of things, it's almost a little eerie when you check your email and there's
nobody wants to talk to me.
There's significantly less in there. And yeah, notifications, 100%. I did the same thing. And I would suggest that people consider doing a bit of a notifications email audit, something that you could add to your task list to do, because it will help in, as you, it'll be an add to your task list that will actually remove and create more time for you down the road. But going through a lot of those emails, and even if you chunked it out for a week and said, I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day unsubscribing, cleaning out, turning off notifications, getting rid of apps on your phone you don't need, but just paring down and finding simplicity and a bit of minimalism when it comes to your tech communication, it's liberating. You don't miss a thing, and it's always there if you need to go back and check in on it. Just because it doesn't ping at you doesn't mean you can't go and look for it yourself. And I also found it was role modeling for my child. And I was noticing that he would say, oh, Mom, your phone went off, and I would grab it. And even if we were in the middle of something, and I found myself saying now, it's okay. You don't have to respond. I don't have to get it. It's okay, honey. If I don't respond right away, if somebody really needs me, they'll phone me with a 911. Even my sister and I have an agreement that, if it's urgent, you never text and say, hey, want to chat? Hey, can you chat? If it's urgent, you say 911. Otherwise, it's there's no expectation of a timed a phone call. I mean, we're not unless you're doing, life-saving surgery for a living, nothing really is that urgent. And it becomes about being really hard-nosed with those priorities, but also setting an example if you have kids in the house and how we already know that kids are glued to their phones. So if it's not too late to be able to demonstrate that, yeah, our phones also don't rule our life. And it doesn't mean I have to drop everything the minute my phone pings, because it makes it very hard to focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is actually an app or a Gmail extension called Unsubscribe, where it will go in and unsubscribe you from all these lists.
Gmail does have an option. It's not with everything, but a lot of the solicitation emails that come in, there is an option just to unsubscribe, and they will do it for you. Another one is Unroll Me, I believe it's, which did two things. It both unsubscribed, but it also rolled up your subscription. So you would get one email from all your favorites, and then you could just kind of scroll through.
And actually a book that I read that really, really changed my whole approach to email is actually called Unsubscribed. It's by Jocelyn, I think you pronounce it Glee, Glei. We'll put it in the show notes. It's a super cute book. It's done with all these illustrations and stuff. It doesn't take very long to read, but it has some really, really useful tips in it on how to manage yourself within email. It's Unsubscribe, How to Kill Email Anxiety, Avoid Distraction, and Get Things Done.
I'd like to read that. I haven't read that book.
Yeah, I'll give you my copy next time I talk to you. It's just a cute little book, and but yeah, it really changed sort of how I thought about email and just made me really realize that, yeah, just because somebody emails me does not mean that I am required to respond right away. And often with email, a lot of the back and forth could be handled with a 5-minute phone call. Don't be a lot of people who work from home. A lot of us are introverts. We don't love phone calls. I hate phone calls, but there are definitely times we're just saying, hey, can we hop on the phone for 5 minutes and hash this out? And just avoid so much back and forth, because every time you respond to an email, you give that person an opportunity to write back to you. But it gets ridiculous. And, it takes far more time to have that conversation in a back and forth email than it would just on a quick phone call. And usually with a lot less misunderstandings, let's be really honest. So that email is just, we could do a whole episode on email, but that's a huge distraction, whether you're working from home or not.
I mean, I'm just kind of looking over some notes that I had, and I feel like those are sort of some of the big ones that really kind of helped me manage that. I mean, even I had a little note on here that one tip is to even keep 2 browsers open, one for fun and one for work. So as opposed to sort of having one browser open with a bunch of tabs that has, whether it be social media or your favorite news site or whatever, but to actually even run 2 different browsers. Like, there's so many different little tips. And once you find what works for you to keep you distraction free, I've heard about extensions you can add that will block notifications. And it kind of depends on how complicated you want to get and how much self-control you have yourself and discipline. But I think that ultimately, if you can spend those first few weeks as you're getting set up, especially if you're new to working from home, or if this is going to be something that you see maybe becoming even more prominent in the road for you, being creative at home, and the more that you can set up with the tools that work for you to carve out that time so it remains as sacred as it can be, kind of working with the 80-20 rule, I think just the more it's going to pay off in spades down the road.
Absolutely. Just don't be afraid to protect your time and say no where you have to, and put rules in place. I mean, I know we all want to be free spirits and work from home and do our own thing, but it doesn't mean you can't have rules. You get to be the one who chooses what the rules are. Like, it's not somebody sitting in a corner office who's deciding your rules for you. You get to make the rules, and you get to make them work for you. And I think that's something a lot of us forget. Same with working with clients who can create a lot of the distractions. Again, you have to put boundaries in place about when you're available and when people can talk to you and when you'll be able to respond. Because at the end of the day, you have to get your work done. Nothing ticks a client off more than when you're late. But if you're late because you're not managing your distractions well, that really is on you.
Yeah, a lot of it, I think, comes down to being both disciplined and intentional. I think if you can go into your day knowing that you're going to be disciplined with your time and your work and being intentional with your time and your work, you're going to see a lot of reward for that, and it's going to lower anxiety and stress.
I think so, definitely.
Well, that is a whole long list of things that we're doing, and I love that we even had distractions during our podcast today about managing distractions. So I think that's great. Next week, we are scheduled to talk about general work from home tips beyond just managing distractions, but some things that Melissa and I have done over the years too, to sort of help you not only set up and manage those distractions, but then just, work more efficiently, work more productively, and maintain some sense of balance. But if you liked what you loved today, we would love for you to let us know. So reach out, leave us a review on whatever app you are using or however you consume this podcast. Going to be back next week. Hope everyone's staying safe and healthy out there.
Yeah, we'll talk to you all next week.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. Be sure to check out the show notes for any links or resources we talked about in this episode. If you enjoyed the chat, please be sure to subscribe and you will automatically be notified when the new shows are released. And we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a review, tell us where you're listening from, or even just send a note to say hi. You can find us at andshelookedup.com or on Instagram under andshelookedup. Thanks so much for listening.